And very pleasant good evening, everybody, from Farrington Field in Fort Worth. Ron DeRockstra, along with Paul Melton tonight. City Video 45's high school game of the week. The Wildcats of Dunbar High School take on the Cougars of Western Hills. Homecoming tonight for Western Hills, but a very important game for both teams, Paul Melton. 3-0. This could very well be the one that decides the 7-5A Top Dog Championship, with Eastern Hills, Southwest, and O.D. Wyatt scrambling for that third position.
This is the showdown that I think everyone that is associated with District 7-5A has looked forward to throughout this football season. This is exactly what was expected when the year began. These two teams coming into the game at 3-0, identical district marks, top District 7-5A. Battle tonight between a couple of very stingy defenses and a couple of powerful offenses. I think defensively, on tradition alone, Dunbar has to have the edge defensively, and Western Hills seems to be the better offensive unit at this point based on their numbers. They've got the very talented, lots of weapons in their offensive backfield, but of course Dunbar with number 26, the sophomore, the district's second leading rusher, Derek Cherry.
Well, offensively, you take a look at these two teams. They're pretty well balanced out as far as what they've produced offensive-wise, as far as rushing and points for, points against are concerned. The officials tonight, as we take a look at Craig Winstell and R.L. McIntyre, Tom Sanders, the linesman, Eddie Lee, the line judge, and George Pollard's the back judge tonight. These teams, when they, rushing-wise, Western Hills has rushed for 1,846 yards this year so far. Dunbar's rushed for 1,833. Passing-wise, Western Hills passes a little more, 663 to 445. So it's going to be a difference tonight of whether or not they keep Cedric Williams in at quarterback for Western Hills and allow Tenafree Jackson to be the split end, or do they get into a little trouble as we see Walter Miller, as he did a couple weeks ago, and wind up putting Jackson in at quarterback and having that option. Of course, like we said earlier, if Dunbar shuts the line down on Classical Freeman, which is who probably will get the ball tonight, he gets the ball a lot. He's got 1,030 yards rushing. They've got a lot of other offensive weapons to go to around the perimeter of the line.
Well, for Western Hills, this will certainly be their biggest defensive test of the year. Dunbar giving up less than 7 points a game, but probably on the other hand, Western Hills will be the biggest matchup that Dunbar has faced this year. Again, they're just loaded with offensive weapons in the backfield, with the likes of Cedric Williams, who's going to start at quarterback, Freeman, Lanier, Credell, and just the top offense right now in the District 7-5A, with Classical Freeman already over the 1,000-yard mark for the season. Last year in 7-5A, only one running back, Willie Shepard from Eastern Hills, went over 1,000 yards all year.
Well, one thing that might be a turning point for these teams tonight may be in the turnover situation. Penalties-wise, Western Hills has been penalized for 451 yards this year. Dunbar has only been penalized 290 yards. It's a difference of 20 yards per game of penalties. Fumbles now, it's a totally different story. Fumbles, 43%, 30 fumbles, and Western Hills has lost 13. Dunbar's only fumbled 14 times, but they've lost 7. 50%, 43%. Dunbar with the surer hands. As you see, the Wildcats offensive unit comes on the field right now. So it may be in the defense clutches if the defense can turn the ball over, cause a fumble, jump on the ball a little bit, give the offense that opportunity inside that magic zone, inside the 30s, let's say, and maybe turn it over that way for a score.
Well, if it comes down to mistakes tonight, the edge has to go to Dunbar because they are the best fundamental ball club in the district. Fine coaching job by Coach Lewis Hayes. You mentioned the problems that Western Hills has had with turnovers this year. They're putting the ball on the ground at least twice a game. Last week they fumbled it twice, lost it twice to Eastern Hills. They've got to correct their turnover problems. In their 3 losses this year, turnovers have been a big key. They haven't been blown out by anyone. In fact, in any of their 3 losses, they could have won those games, but they made more mistakes, more turnovers, more penalties than their opponents.
Well, if you look for who's going to get the ball tonight, we're talking offense, talking a lot of times. One of the ones to get the ball at, Classical Freeman. Expect him to carry the ball 20 to 21 times tonight. The way he's running, he's averaging, he's rushed 148 times for 1,030 yards. He scored 5 TDs. He gets 7 yards a carry, and that kind of equates right to about 20 to 21 times. Montague Credell, you can expect him to rush 6 to 7 carries. Jackson, if he quarterbacks, about a dozen times to touch the ball. On the other side of the line, Derek Cherry can touch the ball 20 to 25 times. Expect him to carry it a lot as well. So the big matchup may be Freeman and Cherry, and the defensive unit's ability to stop those two runners. And if they do, then what do the teams do? Certainly Western Hills has a little bit better advantage there with a lot more to offer if they stop Classical Freeman.
Another advantage Western Hills will have tonight, number 87, the tight end, Brian Tabor. Now, I'm sure Coach Walter Miller and his team has watched plenty of game film on Dunbar. The secondary is a bit inexperienced, more inexperienced than, of course, Lewis Hayes would like to see the Wildcat secondary. But Brian Tabor could be a difference. We've talked about the running game, but the tight end, Brian Tabor, number 87 for Western Hills, could make a difference in this ball game.
Well, if Tinifree Jackson quarterbacks, he's a 54% passer. He's got about 16.5 yards per pass average. And Troy Davis, he averages about 50%, so they're about equal there. But again, 6 yards for Derek Cherry, 6.7, 7 yards for Classical Freeman. You've got a big difference right there in the teams by just a little bit, but the big difference is what happens if the two big men get stopped. Then, like we said, you go to the other ones. The Western Hills ROTC Honor Guard out at midfield right now. We'll get ready for our nation's national anthem.
Homecoming crowd here on the Western Hills side of the field here at Farrington. Homecoming for the Cougars, who win the opening, the toss tonight, but they elect to kick off and defend the south goal. So
which is where the wind is blowing from the south, so it'll be interesting to see why they chose that and what they're going to do with it.
Walter Miller wants to use that wind and see what his defense can do, keeping the Dunbar defense off the field to begin the ball game.
Well, certainly the bigger ones to score on either team right here. You've got Classical Freeman has scored 5 touchdowns. Ron Hawkins has scored 4 this year. Jackson, Credell, and Lanier 2 apiece. That's on the rush. Jackson has thrown for 5 touchdowns, all of those being to Brian Tabor. And Williams has only thrown for 1. On the other side, Derek Cherry has rushed for 7 touchdowns. Davis has got 5. Davis has also thrown 5 touchdowns. And he's gone to Anthony Smith, Hill, and Ethan Faggett, 1 apiece. So the receiving corps for Dunbar has spread out the wealth a little bit. And for the Western Hills Cougars, pretty much it's been Brian Tabor. Cedric Shores and Chris Helsley bring the plays in and out. For the Dunbar Wildcats tonight, receiving in the back, Anthony Smith, number 2, along with Richard Bell on the near side. That's Richard Bell, number 44. Anthony Smith is in the upper right of your screen as we see Trey Wright get ready to kick it off. Trey Wright, the 170-pound junior. This is the district championship, kind of, sort of, if you will, underway as we take the ball back at about the 1-yard line. And Smith brings it up to the 30 before he's taken down, and they get a pretty good return out of that. And Dunbar will take over 1st and 10 from right about the 30-yard line.